Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We've got a pretty interesting show and I think some really terrific guests. We're going to take a look back at a couple of races this past week, and we're also going to look ahead to the Trans-Superior race, which kicks off on Saturday from Sault Ste. Marie all the way to Duluth. First up, we're going to talk to Stephen Kircher, who is the Boyne USA president. Stephen won the Alerion 28 division in the Yugata Regatta, sponsored by the Little Traverse Yacht Club this past weekend. And Stephen has quite a story to tell, and I think you'll find it interesting. When you're so involved in golf and skiing, sailing becomes kind of a hobby, and he's going to talk a little bit about his campaign and where he may be taking his sailing lessons. And the cool part is he was a scratch golfer, college golfer, as well as a obviously unbelievable skier. He's only come to sailing late, but I think he'll talk a little bit about that and what it means not only for himself, but what it means for the Boyne property. So I think it'll be a very interesting conversation. Immediately after that, we're going to swing in and talk to the double-handed winner of the Bayview's 99th running to the Port Huron to Mackinac race. And we're going to talk to John Walton, who was actually the first guest on this show probably 3.5 years ago, back about 110 shows. John's going to talk a little bit about winning the double-handed Mac with his son, Johnny, who was a college racer. We're going to talk to John on their family's brand new boat, actually his wife's boat. And it's a really fun conversation whenever you talk to John. He's also going to look ahead and lend his hand to the folks on Fast Tango who are racing in this coming weekend's race up in Lake Superior. And hopefully they'll get a little expertise. Tim Profit and Fast Tango are only 55 minutes ahead to win the overall Barthel Trophy, which is winning cup for a cumulative time for all three of the races. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. To get a little more insight, obviously, for the Trans-Superior race, we're also going to talk to Stacey McKenzie from the Duluth Yacht Club. Stacey talked to us a couple of years ago when we first got involved in talking about the race, and she's going to kind of tell us what goes on with the Trans-Superior race and maybe learn some things that you might not know about. And then we're going to end up talking, which I think is one of the coolest conversations ever, and that's Eric Wynsma, who owns Usual Suspects, during the Chicago to Mackinac race, 114th running. Eric is one of the TP52 owners, and his cumulative time beat them. The interesting part of the story is this is not a pro race. We've interviewed Eric in the past, but here's the first time when maybe one of the amateurs kind of beat the pros, making a very competitive fleet, and just a terrific story. Eric's a great guy, and they're bringing the Corinthian division into that T52, which now may be, as we've talked about before, maybe the second best T52 fleet in the world. So it's getting more competitive, and it was just a real pleasure to talk to Tim up before they ran the Yugata Regatta up there in Traverse City. So we'll be back with Stephen Kircher in just a second. Welcome back. We got a treat. We're being able to talk to Stephen Kircher, who is the winner of the Alerion 28 category in the Yugata Regatta in Harbor Springs this past weekend. And first of all, congratulations on the win. And talk about the win, about the race, but more importantly, it's such a cool boat. It's an old design from 1940s. Carl Shoemaker kind of took a design, and it's a very specific fleet. And we're talking to you because you won, and I think that's terrific. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we've had some great success. We won actually back-to-back regattas, and I think we're at, if I remember right, we won 10 bullets and 1 second in 11 races in 2 years in Yugata. And we've got a great process. Wally Cross is our coach, and we use system sailing, and it works when you execute. And we're just, honored to be able to compete like that. And it's a wonderful class. It's a large class in Harbor Springs, and being in one design sailing for a number of years, we've embraced that. And it's a beautiful boat. Beautiful overhangs. It's got it's technical, but obviously without a spinnaker. But it's a boat that we've kind of taken our processes from our Walloon heritage up to Harbor Springs and had success.
You are the CEO for Boyne and Boyne Properties and all that is the Kircher family. You kind of came to sailing a little bit late at this point. Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I'm a competitive golfer and started sailing competitively about 12 or 13 years ago. And so it's been a short journey, but a fun journey learning the sport.
How did you end up on the Alerion? How did that end up across the bow of the boat, so to speak?
Well, the picture you have behind you is Pine Point, which is on Walloon Lake, and behind me is that same picture. We have a reflection of the same place. And Pine Point is right on the lake, and I used to watch the 17 class, which is indigenous to Walloon. It's a boat that was designed in the 30s as a knockoff to the J boats of the time. It's a sister craft to the NM, which is in Harbor Springs, and we became very competitive on Walloon. And we had a day sailor, had a sonar that was at its end of its useful life. So I bought an Alerion for Walloon, thinking that's going to be my new day sailor for the family. And unfortunately, the draft on it was such that we couldn't get in and out very efficiently. So I moved it to Harbor Springs, to Irish, where we do a lot of business and stuff up there. And I realized there was a huge wanton design class in Harbor Springs, and we started dabbling in that and had so much fun. We moved our operation, if you will, Team Pine Point, up to Harbor Springs, and we've been campaigning out of there on Tuesdays and Uganda in the last couple of years. So it's a journey, and it's a stepping stone to our next step. So we're excited about it.
Is your crew sort of handpicked, or is it friends that sail, or is it a combination of both?
Well, we've got a rotation of folks. We're building depth to our team. Some of the folks I've either friends or in-laws or people I've Henry Pfeiffer, for example, used to work for Irish, and I recruited him, and he's the one that said, you could use a guy like Wally Cross to help you learn faster. So he brought Wally to us, and it's just building blocks. It's like business. If you put the right people in the right seat, good things start happening, and momentum picks up, and we're kind of experiencing that within the sport of sailing. It's just fun to have success and have fun doing it, and be able to go from one design to the next, and hopefully the next, and be competitive. So it's an interesting journey.
Alerion is the fleet for up in that harbor in that area. It's obviously lots of fleets are regional, go from different places. It's one of the larger fleets outside of San Francisco. And what's the allure of the boat? Is it because of being a day sailor, just the lines, the look? It's fast. What is it that you love so much about the boat?
Well, I love the look. I'm certainly partial to good looking boats. The 17 is one of the most beautiful boats. The J boats, as we mentioned, and NMs. The Alerion is a more modern version. Obviously, it's not a really modern racer, but I'm really attracted to large one design fleets and having a competitive fleet to work against, and to work our processes as we try to continue to improve. So it was as much about the fact that I owned one, and there happened to be a bunch of them in Harbor Springs, and we could join a very competitive fleet with lots of seasoned sailors that we could see if we're competitive. Is what we're doing on Walloon competitive? And it proved out that it was very competitive up in Harbor Springs. And again, we hope it goes beyond that.
Sometimes when you're in the business of recreation, you spend your time more business oriented than you do actually golfing and skiing. Is sailing the sanity that you get the chance to get out to when everything else isn't quite working right?
I would actually argue that sailing has been a validation of what we're trying to do in the company at Boyne. Getting good processes in place, getting the right people, doing the right things right, I guess, and it just is a sport that, unlike golf, which is individualistic, it's very much more like business. So to some degree, it's practicing the same principles. And I think I'm a better business person because of the sailing processes that I've learned. It's validated the very things we're doing at Boyne. And they're very, I love the Tuesday night thing because it doesn't affect weekends. It doesn't affect the work week. It's a great evening to break up the week, and we get that fun. I mean, certainly it's a passion, but I'm still a golfer. I'm still competitive in golf, and that's probably the thing that affected me most. Is my weekends became sailing on Walloon, and that impacted my golf game, which was a little bit of a issue that I had to grapple with. So the Tuesday's a nice balance between family, business, and sailing and golf.
For those of us who golf and sail at the same season, we don't have the issue obviously in the winter because it's skiing and you don't have to worry about the rest of it. But there is conflict, is there not, in the brain when you're doing one, you want to be somewhere else?
There's time conflict without a doubt. I think you just got to be. What I've been doing is just be really efficient on practice on both sailing and golf. Hitting balls for 45 minutes while on a conference call, and you can kind of meditate while you're hitting balls and maintain your golf game, and not spend a lot of time doing it. So it's a good balance. My kids are playing golf and they're sailing a little bit, so it's somewhat of a family endeavor as well. But certainly the sailing is, like I said, emblematic of running a small business, and it's exciting to have success in both.
From what you're talking about and what we talked about earlier before we started the interview, you're kind of looking at maybe IC37s, the Melgus, and sort of putting a syndicate together. So is sailing becoming a bit business-like as well as just the recreational pursuit that you enjoy?
Well, it like life, it's a journey, and seeing, going from a 17, being competitive in that class, moving the Alerion, proving that we could take it on the road, so to speak. We're going to take it on the road again to Newport this fall, and hopefully be competitive with Wally and the system and the people that are involved in Team Pine Point. We're building depth and people that have a common language, a common understanding of how to execute. And it's a test, can we go to this next level? Because clearly it's a big jump and a much more technical boat with the asymmetrical spinnaker and executing that. And that boat behind you has actually got an ASIM, and to some degree, it's my training boat for the IC37. It's 32 feet, and we're doing some training on that, getting our systems down for the asymmetrical sets. And so I kind of weave a lot of decision making in to build on momentum for the next steps we're taking. So it's a fun process.
We had a chance last year to interview both the Melguses. Harry, the fourth, is now part of the America's Cup group in Barcelona, and I've been on the IC37 a couple of times. It's a wonderful boat. It's a really good. It's sort of almost a mini 52, and it certainly is fast. It was a great design for sure.
Yeah.
Last question: if giving everything equal, what's the hardest or what's the easiest to you? A perfect tack, a perfect wedge, a perfect ski turn. Of those three,
Wow.
You're a methodical kind of guy. What do you think takes more brain power out of those three? I'm not sure I ever asked that question before.
Well, it is about whether it's a subconscious move. It's in, you've done it so many times, it's just burned into your brain. Like, you're a good skier, you know what that's like when it's intuitive. It's funny because last night we were racing and I was tacking, and I was thinking about how much it's become intuitive to know the timing and the cadence of a good tack. I'm hitting that like 5 degrees off of, close hauled pretty closely now. A lot like hitting a good wedge in the center of the club face straight at it's, they're very similar once you get to the level of almost a subconscious move. And I'm approaching that point, I guess, in my scaling career, that I can hit a wedge and I can take a turn, and they're all about the same amount of brain power. So that's my answer. That's a great question.
And the other one I just want to ask briefly: do we really understand how good the Yugata Regatta is? And I say that because obviously it's always the sort of the everybody's coming home. The lineup that comes to that race for the Little Traverse Yacht Club is amazing. And I'll give you the example. Last year on a 111, you got Terry Hutchinson, on one of the boats, who's obviously one of the best sailors in the world. So my question is twofold. Do we recognize how good the race is? And it is unbelievable. And does it help? Is it really a helpful tourism? Does that attract folks? Is it something that folks come up to watch?
Well, another great question. It's interesting being out there. I've lived here my whole life in the, Boyne City, Boyne Falls, Harbor Springs, Petoskey area. And I had the fortunate to be over in the Med this spring and see some of those great sailing ports. And what I realized when we were racing out there with the TP52s and all these beautiful boats, the pageantry, the location, there is arguably not a better place in the world in July and August to sail and to recreate than this part of northern Michigan in particular. And Harbor Springs is the episode. It hit me when I was actually going out and coming back. It was like, this, how does it get any better than this? I mean, like I said, I came back from the Med. I've been to Newport. I've been to Miami. I've been to, all these places that are in San Diego and et cetera, et cetera. It is a very special place. The physical attributes, the architecture, the level of competition, the boats, the aesthetics, the water, the orientation of the sun, when you're everything about it is really almost perfect. If it was 12 months a year, it'd be that much better. But obviously it's a beautiful place for a narrow period of the summer. And arguably that's why Uganda is such a special event, because people recognize that from all over the world, honestly, when they come here. And it was a proud moment, actually, being having born and raised up here, to see that level of enthusiasm for this beautiful place, Little Traverse Bay and beyond. So that it struck me this weekend, just exactly that.
The one thread for the show that's been interesting is the quality that's come out of Harbor. If you think of Matt Cassidy, if you think of Chris Shepler, there's, a town of, I'm guessing 3,000 or 4,000 has had 3 or 4 guys end up in America's Cup races. And the funny part of, again, the thread is that I knew Chris Shepler for 30 years and I didn't recognize that he'd sailed with Coke until somebody had mentioned to me that he was part of that deal, which is we ended up on the program because I'd coached against him as a ski coach for years. And all of a sudden he's, part of that. So Harbor's had Matt Cassidy made the point, the same kind of thing. There's just been a ton of guys that have come out of that area.
That's a small reason too. I'm a little competitive, and being a Northern Michigan guy, a Great Lakes person, a Midwest person, if you take the circle and expand it, going out and competing in the IC37 against the best East Coast, Southern, West Coast people, and even some New Zealand teams, how can we do from this part of the world against the best teams in the world? So to some degree, that's another part of why I'm doing it, to bring the Midwest to bear on the IC37. So we've got a lot of great sailors and a lot of, like Wally, we mentioned Wally, and he's one of the best sailors maybe in the world. And we're lucky enough to have him as our coach, and he'll be on board as our main sail trimmer on the IC37. So it should be fun to watch.
Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time this morning. Everything there from Pine Point to make sure that appreciate your time and all that you've done for the sport and certainly for skiing. And you have a great campaign this fall, and we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Stephen for spending some time and talking a little bit about buoying and sailing and all that it means, and kind of defining the differences between a wedge, a ski turn, and maybe a simple tack. I thought it was an interesting discussion. So we'll have that conversation, and we'll talk to John Walton in just a couple of minutes.
Welcome back. We're talking with John Walton, who is actually one of the first guys we ever interviewed for Inside Great Lakes Sailing. And John just finished his double-handed race for the Port Huron and Mackinac Bayviews race, the 99th. And you guys won double-handed, you and your son, Johnny.
Yes.
So first of all,
it was a great race.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And talk a little bit about the race.
Well, it was a challenging race. We had every condition from no wind, light air upwind, light air downwind, heavier upwind, heavier downwind, torrential rain, thunderstorms. It was a little bit of everything, and very challenging. Not much sleep because of we did over 35 sail changes in 45 hours, and it was a good race for us. Normally a small boat like ours can't compete against the bigger boats in our class, but the conditions worked out great.
You have a son who's a college racer, was a college racer.
Yeah, my son sailed. He and I were co-skippers, so we split the duties equally, and having a great sailor like him, really, it helped me get a few hours sleep every now and then, and vice versa. I think he trusts me. You never know with your son, but yeah. And
John, the obvious question is, as a father, was it nice to have him on the boat because he's a great sailor, or because your son, or both?
Both, of course.
Okay.
That's the only answer that's acceptable.
No, I understand. Those are life moments, obviously.
Yeah, no, we had, we get along really well, and like any sailing crew, we disagree at times, but we always work it out, and I respect his ability. He, I think, respects mine, and so we work pretty well together.
Okay, as co-skippers, who has the final say?
The guy who writes checks.
Okay. All right. I get that part of it. Is he a better sailor than you? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, we haven't raced against each other too much lately, but certainly I'd be up for a challenge from him and vice versa. So.
Okay. Because obviously Johnny's really one of the better sailors, younger sailors that's come out of this area for
he had
sure.
a very good junior sailing career, a good college career, and now he's moving on and doing clinics, etc. Still coaching. So yeah, he's very accomplished.
I'm going to ask a stupid question based on what I think is a stupid question, but I want to ask it anyway. Two-handed and you win. You've done Transperior and won the Transperior as a single-handed.
Yes.
Tell me, what do you think the difference is? And I understand one person on the boat, you get more time, but is it having the time to lapse? Is that being able to fall asleep? Is that really that much different?
No, actually, I'd say on some of the single-handeds I've gotten more sleep, but I think double-handed you actually push the boat harder because there are two people. So if you need to do a windy sail change, there's less preparation. You can just do it instead of getting everything set up for single-handed. The Mackinac race, a prestigious race, we pushed it hard to try and do as good as we can because it's a big deal.
Something over 39 hours on the race, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound about right?
I think so, 30, 39, 40, something like that. So it was a fast race. Normally in our boat it's 45 hours to 50 hours.
It's an isolated time with just two people sitting in a cockpit a lot of that time. Yeah, obviously you're racing and you're changing sails, you're doing all those other kind of things. What's the general part of the conversation? What do you talk about?
Mostly since he's a sailor and I'm a sailor and we're both, very competitive, 90% of our conversations were about the race.
Okay, so there's no reminiscing about 1965.
No, we're not listening to the radio or, any of that.
Do you think that would surprise most people?
Maybe, because a lot of the fully crewed boats, you have a lot of free time. But when it's just two of you, you're always adjusting the sails or steering or, doing a sail change. So,
as a fellow 69er, almost 70 next year, does Johnny appreciate being on the boat with you? It means more to you because of the age and because of the situation. Does he recognize the specialness of the opportunity to sail with your dad?
I think so, and I certainly appreciate a young, strong guy to help out. He on the sail changes he did. Say if we did 35 sail changes, probably 30 of them he was the guy on the bow. So
I'm assuming the wife then has to take the trailer all the way up to Mackinac?
Yes.
So she's really the unsung hero in all this.
Oh yeah, she's a real trooper. When I did the Transperior, she drove the trailer all the way to Duluth, and it's a 30-foot long trailer, so it's longer than the car.
We are obviously sitting on her boat as we speak.
Yes.
So she's got to get a pat on the back for this, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No,
okay.
She's supportive. She does meal planning, logistics. Yeah.
You're a quiet, competitive guy. So my question is, when you win, is it internal celebration to your friends, or do you let them know that you won, or is it just kind of, hey, we picked up the victory?
Yeah, most of my friends are sailors, and most of them are watching the race. So I got quite a few texts after the race when it was official. But as far as Johnny and I, we shook hands and hugged after the race, and each had a beer. My wife, one of the things she does as the shore captain, as we call her, was she brings beer to the dock when we dock after the finish. So any time of day, 3 a.m, whatever it is, she's there.
I like the idea of shore captain. I think that's a title that we'll use. Well, again, congratulations on the victory. I want to change subjects briefly.
Okay.
Coming up this weekend is the Transperior. You were a single-handed winner 2 years ago.
Yes.
And now you're going back up, I believe, with
Tim Profit
on Fast Tango.
Yes.
He's had a phenomenal 2 races so far.
Yes.
There's been a switch of crowd between the Bayview race, the Chicago race, and now it's another set of guys changing over. Obviously, you're on the boat because you're a great sailor, but also because you've run that race a number of times.
I've been friends with Tim, and he asked me 2 years ago after he found out I had done the race already. Even though I don't think there's a lot of local knowledge, it's a big lake race, but. And I have fun sailing with him. He's a super competitive sailor. He spends 12 months a year preparing his boat and keeping it ready. So it's a fun boat to sail on.
Talk about the lake and the race and the ups and the downs of Lake Superior.
Well, Lake Superior's, it's a big lake, 1,300 feet deep, I think, at its deepest spot. And the race is a long race. It's 350 miles in a big arc, mostly going west. So it's generally a lot of upwind sailing. Usually you can get big storms, but the water's so cold that storms tend to dissipate. So storms can be strong, but I know when I did it the last time, the 2 storms I went through, neither of them lasted more than 10 or 15 minutes. So that was nice.
Any experiences with terrible groups of bugs and some of the stories that we've heard of? There's been inundation?
No.
Cold, certainly.
Yeah. I think the cold keeps them away. It's not like Lake Huron or Lake Michigan where you can get inundated.
To give people kind of an idea, you start in Sault Ste. Marie and you kind of head to the top of the Kiniwa and then can sort of make a 40-degree turn back into Duluth.
Basically, there's no marks in the course. Just you just got to stay away from land, and you finish right at the harbor entrance to Duluth. It's actually challenging at night because you're coming in with all the city lights, and it's hard to see the finish line. And right after the finish line, you have to stop or you hit land.
All right, Tim is involved in potentially with his finishes both at the MAC and the Chicago race, and if he has a good Trans-Superior, there's an overall trophy for the best finish of the 3 races.
Correct.
And 2 years ago, Keith Stauber won it.
Right.
From Duluth, who's the PHRF handicapper for Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
And he runs on Papagacho, but you guys are potentially in the running for that same run, that race.
Right. No, it's depending on the conditions, because there's some really big 60 and 70 footers trying also. And my understanding, it's the total corrected time for the 3 races. And so we need to have a really good race. And I think a couple boats beat Tim in the Chicago race, a couple of the big boats that were in a different class. He obviously won overall in Bayview, so he was in first place after that. And I think he's probably still in first place for the trophy.
What do you know about the Trans-Superior that we don't know?
Well, we talked about the finish. That's going through the locks is interesting because you have to go through the locks to get into the lake. And they, when I went, because of my small boat, I went in the small boat lock, which is freighters don't go in anymore. And they stuffed about probably 30 of us in the lock at one time. We were rafted just wall to wall, and that was interesting.
For sure.
And then, but they have to get everybody out to the race, and they all have to go through. So I think the big boats they do in one of the big freighter locks. It's where the big boats go through.
Well, John, congratulations on a double-handed win at the Bayview's race, and
Thank you.
Hope you have a great Trans-Superior and have a great time.
Well, great. Well, thanks a lot.
I want to thank John for his time, and we wish them the best of luck. Hopefully, Fast Tango can come home with the overall trophy. If that's the case, we'll certainly talk with Tim Profit for next week. Don't forget, this weekend is also the get this right, ILCA National Laser Championships. We're going to do a whole show on that. Bill Vogel spent some time pulling together one of the best races, maybe in North America this summer. It'll be held both at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club and at Crescent Yacht Club. And Bill's got to give you a lot of credit for doing a great race. So if you want to see some unbelievable racing, including some Olympian guys, come on out and check out the racing, because again, next year, 2024 is Paris, and Bill should be given a pat on the back for what a great race. And we'll bring the race, the competitors, and a little bit about how you end up with a national championship in your local yacht club. That'll be part of that conversation for next week. Up next is Stacy McKenzie. Stacy is the organizer for the Trans-Superior. We'll talk to her in just a second.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking to Stacy McKenzie, who is one of the co-directors for the 2023 Trans-Superior race, which gets off this coming Saturday. We had a chance to talk to you 2 years ago, and we kind of explored the race. And with the race coming up, I know you have about 35 boats registered. And just kind of take us through briefly what is going to happen between now and Saturday and the race kicking off.
Yeah, not between now and Saturday. So most of the boats are already doing their deliveries out to Sault Ste. Marie. So we've been following them along. There's the international race is a delivery race out there. So we're partnering with LSYA to get those boats to Houghton and Marquette, and then on to Sault Ste. Marie. So that's happening as we speak. Bus leaves on Thursday from Duluth. So Thursday night when we get out to the Sioux, we're going to have a social hour there at Birdseye, one of our sponsors. Then Friday morning, we get right into race registration. And then we have our skippers meeting in the evening. Saturday morning, we start locking through at 8 and 9 in the morning to get out to the start at 1 p.m.
And you have some of the best racers that are just completed in both the Bayview and the Chicago Tamac races.
Yep,
You've got all the big boys, and they're kind of gunning. This is the longest freshwater race in the world, and it's been running since '69. Is that pretty accurate?
Yep. Yes, it is.
When you say you had a bus going back, so there is transportation that you guys provide for the racers?
Yep. So we have a bus that leaves from Duluth and then stops in Ashland to pick up some people that might be wanting to jump on there, and it'll haul people back home if they're jumping off doing deliveries. We can haul gear back, kind of anything.
Dumb question, but you do, when you're delivering boats, you cut through the waterway across the middle of the key and on through Houghton, obviously.
Yep.
I wonder how much mileage that cuts off going all the way to the top. It's got to cut off 50, 60 miles, right?
It's quite a bit. It can be a little bit slower going through the waterway there, but and it's also kind of a nice stopping point for those who want to take a break, get some fuel, kind of right in the middle of the lake there.
Will you head to Sault Ste. Marie, or will you be stationed in Duluth?
Yep, I leave Thursday, so I'll be out there for everything in Sault Ste. Marie, and then I head back Sunday morning to set up headquarters here in Duluth.
Being a normal race, we can probably figure guys coming in Monday night, Tuesday morning. Is that typically what happens?
I would say Monday morning for some of the big guys. The record was 36 hours, I believe. That was El Mastro, so they finished somewhere around 2 a.m. on Monday morning. But I would say probably sometime early to mid Monday morning, they'll start coming in, and probably all the way through Wednesday night, Thursday morning.
I can say if they start coming in Wednesday and Thursday, there's some issues somewhere. There's no doubt. You've raced in this race, am I correct? Am I correct? Okay. Yep. Just give us a brief understanding of why it's, I think, the best of all races, because obviously it's Lake Superior. It's deep, right. It's colder, it's all those other kind of things. Does it not also provide much more extreme weather on both ends of the spectrum?
Yes. Yep. I would say the things that make it the best are some of the unpredictability. Obviously, on the Great Lakes, weather can kick up on any of them, but like you said, it's bigger, it's deeper, it's colder. There's definitely a lot more extreme weather that we can encounter, especially if we've got a really strong wind out of the northeast. It kicks the waves pretty good to be a huge downwind sleigh ride, but maybe not in a good way.
Tell me about the trophy that's for the overall winner for all three of the races that you guys will hand out in Duluth. It is called
It's called the Barthel Trophy. It's part of the Tri-Lakes Challenge. So we have boats who are all gunning for it. We've got the last race. I think right now Fast Tango is in the lead, leading by about 55 minutes ahead of Talisman. So we've got 326 miles to go to see who comes back with that one.
So Bruce Akins will be fighting. Okay, it should be so it's a cumulative time. Am I correct?
Yep. 55
minutes isn't a lot.
It's not a lot. It's going to be a tight race.
You know, the funny part of the timing with some of these races, the PT52s just did the Ugata Regatta, and they also did the Chicago to Mac, and there was only about 2.5 minutes corrected time at the end of the race. So you talk about handicapping, you've got 8 boats and you're only a couple of minutes apart. That's extraordinary competition and certainly close competition.
Absolutely.
What a way to race. So
yeah.
Have you guys done forecasts on the weather at all? Have you looked at the models? I'm just curious what you've looked at.
We don't have anything. The long range, the most they'll do is 5 days, so we should have something coming up from them soon. But we'll have a daily briefings that we can send out if anyone has self-service or anything like that. But we're working closely with them to make sure that we're staying on top of that. We've got a great relationship with the Coast Guard, so we're kind of covered on making sure we're on top of anything that's coming.
It's been an incredibly cold summer as compared to where we've got all kinds of horrible heat, process all over the country. We've been a relatively mild. We've had a few days in that were warm. Do you think it'll stay cold? You just guessing?
I think I don't see anything in the forecast now that shows it's going to be any kind of a heat wave. I think we're looking at mid 70s for highs. So it'll be a chilly one. Make sure everyone brings their warm weather gear.
Lots of puffy coats, as it were.
Yes.
So, all right. Last question. What's the hardest job of doing something every 2 years? And what is obviously rewarding is you're the organizer, you're doing all these things. What gives you cause a couple days before a race? Is there anything? Maybe not.
Um, did you say, I'm sorry, you say, and it gives me
Just-
pause?
Just what let me I'll edit this. Let me ask you a better question.
Yeah.
You got a few days before the race. You're only dealing with about 40 boats, unlike the other two races where you're obviously dealing with a couple of hundred. But you're dealing with the best guys, which means they're looking for every edge and every opportunity. As a co-director, what is it that keeps you awake at night until the gun goes off on Saturday?
I think personally is making sure that I've dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's and make sure that I provide the best experience for everybody that we can. That's really my biggest thing. I don't want anything to fall through the cracks. I don't want anyone to have a negative experience because we've missed something. So that's really the only thing that's bothering me at this point.
Is it true to say that this race is gaining in popularity and more importantly in publicity? It's getting more publicity than what it might have gotten even 5 years ago?
I would say that it's probably about the same. I think that with the pandemic, we had a huge surge in participation because people were, locked down for so long. I would say that we're probably about the same as we have been. We're kind of on par. We've always had a lot of interest from news outlets and things like that.
Okay.
Lots of support from the club and locals and friends, but and we like it that way. We talk about, do we want to keep growing the race and making it as big as one of the Max? And I think that if we do that, we lose the charm that is the Trans Superior.
The boys on Tango are pulling out all the stops because they've had different crews for both the MAC races. John Walton, who again we talked to earlier in the show, is actually going to be on with Tim. So he's got some obviously serious onboard, experience having won the single-handed 2 years ago. So it'll be a fun race.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
listen, thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking a couple minutes with us, and
Yeah.
we'll check back in hopefully after the race, and we can talk about how great it was.
Can I throw in one quick plug?
Absolutely.
We have a brand new partnership this year where you can virtually race the Trans Superior. So if you're stuck at home, stuck running the race like me, if you're working, Real Sail has partnered with us. So we've got quite a few boats already signed up. So if you can't do the race in real life, come and do it virtually. We even have flags that we're going to hand out at the end for the top 3 finishers.
Okay, you got to explain okay, obviously it's a virtual race, so this is a video game, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So on the computer, on the app.
All right.
And
Okay, and I'll get the information afterwards and we'll post it and stuff, but is there any cost to the race?
No, it's free.
So I go online and I'm looking at my computer, and if I got a big screen, even better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So am I going to be on my computer for 36 hours, or am I just going to kind of check back in as the boat goes?
You can just check back in however often you'd like. We have people from around the world who already signed up. We've got someone from, I think, Italy. He said he's flying in if he gets one of the top 3 spots. So the competition's already heating up there. But yeah, so and you can follow along, and they'll have an overlay of the actual competitors, so you can race head to head against people who are doing the race in real time.
Okay, so dumb question. In the race virtually, you take off. Well, the guys on the water are obviously looking at the weather. You go to bed, come back 8 hours later, and the weather's changed. Is that all included as part of what you're doing with the virtual game?
Yep. So you'll have all access to all of the current weather, wind directions, things like that, and you can make your decisions. You want, which angle you want to sail, and if you set it and forget it, you can. I've done a race before like this where I started a race and I kind of forgot that I was a part of it, and next thing I knew, I crashed into Brazil. So, so it's very much you set your direction, you set your sail plan, and then change it as often as you'd like.
Okay, the name of the company.
Yep. Real Sail.
REALSAIL.
Yep.
.com.
Yep.
Okay, and you just go on there and sign up for the race.
Yep.
Okay.
Sign up. You can make your own boat. You can name it whatever you like. If you've got a boat of your own, you can
Are there?
that
I'm just
one.
curious. Are there different kinds of boats that are on the site itself? So you could have a J boat, or you could have a.
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to double check. But I'm pretty certain that you can pick what type of boat you like. I don't know that it's a super all-inclusive list, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to sail it, but maybe I get a chance to anyway, sort of in
Well,
a
there you
sitting in a
go.
chair out way over here. Maybe I can beat. That would be kind of cool to beat if I do it. Beat Keith.
Yeah, exactly. That
So,
can be a great goal. Yep.
that'd be fun. All right, hey, that's going to be fun. We're going to check back in on this
Yes.
and the virtual race,
Mhm.
and maybe we'll do some interviews with the people. I tell you what, let's do some interviews with the people that won the virtual race. That'd be cool as
Yeah,
heck.
let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, have a great weekend. Have a great race, and we'll touch base Tuesday, Wednesday next week for sure. So thank you so
All
much.
right, sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Have a great trip.
Want to say thank you to Tracy for kind of giving some insight. I had no idea you could take a bus from Duluth back to Sault Ste. Marie. That's a piece of information I think is kind of cool. And check out the realsail.net if you want to race virtually and maybe even beat some. They're going to pull out flags for some of the boats that are racing online. We'll certainly be one of those, and we'll let you know who wins. And hopefully we can come up with an interview next week with somebody who had won the virtual race as well as the actual race itself. So up next is Eric Wynsma talking about Usual Suspects, and Eric will give you some insight to a sport that competitive sport at the level you don't always have to be the most. You don't have to. It'll just be an interesting session to talk about pros and amateurs. So it's a great win for Eric and for all the folks in the TP252 fleet. So Eric will be up in a second.
Welcome back. We're talking to the recent Great Lakes 52 winner, Eric Wynsma, with Usual Suspects. Just got a chance to win the corrected time for the Chicago to Mac race in that division. And the unusual part of this is it's sort of I want to say the amateurs, but certainly not the pros, the non-pros against the pros. And Eric, first of all, congratulations, and just talk a little bit about the win.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Greg. Basically, you kind of hit it. We're sort of a non-pro 52. There's one more of us out there. They're a boat called Legacy. They're out of Racine, Wisconsin, and they're like us, a little bit more of an amateur-based effort. They might have one or two guys that are industry related. I know the owner also owns a boatyard. So they're kind of like us. I mean, I've got some really, really, really good amateurs, and we have one actual pro, Chad Huff from Quantum Sales. So anyway, that's a unique position to be in a very Grand Prix fleet with a lot of paid professional athletes. These guys are awesome. I love it that they're in the game. They're super, super helpful. They're nice to us. Everybody's really cool, and we really like being around them. And we especially enjoy every now and then they let us beat them. And it doesn't happen much for us. But I think our goal for this project is just to be in the game. And once in a while, we get our turn to beat a boat or two. And this time I can't say we got lucky. There wasn't some huge shift, but we just kept grinding. And it was our turn. It was just our day. Everything went right. The older 52s, like my boat and like Scott's Boat Legacy, are particularly well suited to kind of a lighter air, reachy off-wind race like that. A little bit narrower, a little less wetted surface, a little less drag. So in the light stuff, they can kind of get accelerated a little bit easier. And so overall, it's a good race. The people thing worked out perfectly. The boats we were sailing against were a ton of fun. A lot of things had to go right for this to happen, and they did.
When the results came out, though, there had to be a little bit of a smile on the back of that. There had to be a little bit of, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. There's some shock value there, and it started probably about the time we got to the beginning of the Manitou Passage. So you go by whatever that is, G7. And I was kind of thinking about that, and they were, the guys on the boat were reading where the positions were of some of the other boats, and I'm just kind of envisioning this like west to east line moving up the lake and thinking, based on that description, we're like kind of in this. We might have a shot. So nobody was really talking about it. We all sort of knew it was there, and just really kept working. We have a lot of high energy guys on board. Ron Sherry, obviously, that guy pushes us real hard. There's not a lot of lazy on our boat. If anybody wins that award, it's me. I actually got a decent amount of sleep during the race, and sometimes it just works better when I'm not involved. Maybe, I don't know, but everybody pushed hard. It was a fantastic event.
Ron Sherry, a world champion ice boater. Talk a little bit about what he means to your crew.
Yeah, so he's, he has he'll have like little momentary bursts of intensity, and our team really needed some of that. So his bringing that to us is really positive. He also knows just when to be a complete goofball. We do some crazy things on the boat. There's a lot of laughing, and sometimes maybe we should be more serious, but it just works for us. So Ron brings a lot of that to us. It's a really positive energy. Anybody who knows Ron doesn't doubt a word I've just said. It's completely his brand. Just an incredibly good sailor, but also really wanting to be a teacher. He's not paid as a professional, but he's better than most pros, in my opinion. And for our particular group, which is really friends and family oriented, he's just what we needed.
We talked to you 18 months ago. You bought the boat. You were talking about using it almost like same dock at Macatawa, using it almost in double-handed beer racing kind of thing on Thursday. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you're not treating the 52 you have the way some of the other guys, Bob Hughes and Chris Duan, and certainly with WinQuest and the boat with that. You treat this like it's family and out you go. And that's the conversation that we had probably 18 months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
So my question is threefold. One, the Great Lakes 52s, and I talked to Bob Hughes last week, and he kind of sized it up. I've had some experience with the Super Series and kind of watching them, and there's a pro. Every guy in the boat's a pro. There's no friends and family. It's the real deal. Obviously, the Great Lakes isn't that, but the boats are so competitive. And again, look at the 6 or 7 boats that raced, and there's literally a minute and a half on corrected time to separate first from 5th, 6th, or 7th. Yeah. So my question is, the rigging and all of the specific specifications have to be within a very mind tolerance. So does that help the series? Obviously, it's got to make it really competitive because you obviously want to race.
Yeah, and there's different approaches, and not everybody has the same approach. You know, some guys in some fleets, you got the guy that puts the bow down and goes fast to the mark, and the other guy that pinches and goes slow, and they get there at the same time. So, you know, you don't have to do everything the same. We are very much not as intense with our boat prep and some of those things as these guys. Our commitment level in terms of both time and resources is substantially less. We do the best we can with what we have, and that approach will help us get away with some stuff in offshore races. So we do get our turn frequently offshore. We get to play the game with these guys, which is sweet. In the buoy circuit stuff, like what we're about to do out here, starting tomorrow in Harbor Springs, that's a different deal, and we have a harder time staying with them. But we know that going in, and that's okay. These guys they're sailing new equipment. They have new sails. They're professional guys. Most of those boats are all pro, pretty much top to bottom. There's I know each boat has 1 or 2 of the buddies on it, et cetera, but those are mostly professional efforts, and we certainly respect it, and especially the fact that the owners of all those boats are willing to share their resources to try to help us get better. They're always, all these guys are dropping by with, hey, we noticed that your takedown system looks like XYZ, just little things like that. It's been a really cool experience just engaging with people at the top level of the sport, even though we're just, we're club level sailors for the most part. So
I think Larry Ellison's done us a lot of credit with Oracle, with Sail GP, where everybody gets the same information and everybody uses the same boats. And at the highest level, just below that group, which is you guys, a lot of that's rubbing off. There's the great guys, they want to share it. They want a competitive race.
Yeah.
The cost of the boats have also come down drastically over the last 2 to 3 years, where if you're looking at a boat 5 years ago, it's $1 million. Now you can find them, $250 to $200,000.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that briefly once before. It can happen even for less than that. But the big thing isn't the buying of the boat. It's it's also, and this is a little bit of a sales pitch, because obviously my motive here is I want to try to get more amateur-based 52s on the lakes. But on the cost standpoint that you asked about, yes, you can buy boats with that. We're considerably less even. There's a boat in Racine, Wisconsin that is so fast and so good, and it's available. It's Eric Jones has it listed for sale. Anybody serious about it? I'd love to have the conversation. But the operating costs are not high. The way that I'm doing it, they're just not. It's not that bad. I compare it to maybe the FAR 400 or the FAR 40, both of which we owned before this, and those were, I would say, I don't think we're spending more than we were then. The big thing is that sales are readily available. There's a lot of used sales. The European teams, the Quantum Luft in Traverse City, whatever. There's a ton of sales that are available, and maybe they've got 8 or 10 hours on them, or 20 or whatever. That's not a lot of use, and they sell them pretty cheap because they don't have a big audience. So
right.
sell them too. So that brings down the sale buying cost is just, it's like a Melgus 24 maybe. The operating costs, other than that, used stuff is readily available. There's dockage and boat storage are going to be higher because it's a big boat, but everything else seems in line.
Obviously, for a winner, it's a huge victory, but talk a little bit about what it might be for maybe the guy, the 8th or 9th or 10th guy in the crew that may be a family member. That's just got to be even more, just such a jubilation for those guys.
Yeah, well, there's 12 or 13 of us generally, and I'm probably more towards the bottom end of that pile in terms of skill set. I'm by far not the best guy on the boat. There's a lot of very talented people. Yeah, it means a lot to everybody, though. And honestly, I think the most excited people were some of the top guys. We have extremely fortunate to have guys like Ron, you talked about, Steve Roselle, Charlie Trost. I mean, these guys are absolute gangsters. They're so good. Sam Netto joined us this year as our navigator. That was really, really a good addition for our team. Our regular pit guy, Matt Dombrowski, Casey McGovern's on runners. Hank Swain's our main sheet trimmer. My daughter Ella does bow. My son Murphy trims jib and kite. It's kind of it's a little bit of a mixed bag, and I don't think it meant more to any of us than any of the others. It's not like the top level guys that have won more just said, oh well, whatever, it's another victory. This one felt like a big deal. Okay. And I think the reason is because we all can see what the level is that the Grand Prix 52s are being operated at, and just to think that our little friends and families show could go play at that level, that's just, I think it's a really cool testament to what the boats are, and they really are quite evenly matched, especially when you plug in the ratings. I think it's very fair.
I guess what I'm saying is that there's such good skippers in the crew across the board. When the guy who typically doesn't win comes up and wins, that it solidifies just how good the fleet is, number one, and number two, it makes it a little more competitive because they're going to want to come back and say, hey, we're going to get you next time. And I understand you're going to do buoy racing this week. And are you doing the Trans-Superior?
No, I've never had that. That's never been part of my program, but sounds cool. No, we're just doing that.
My point is that after this one, then it's obviously take the boat home and get ready for the rest of the 52 series, which comes up.
Well, yeah, and we don't get to do all the buoy events. Being an amateur crew has limitations, and namely, people have jobs. And so with limited vacation days, it's too hard to try to create a whole new crew for each event. So, I'm trying to simplify my life a little bit and not chase that as hard as I might be tempted to. We do the events that I can reasonably get crew for. We do as much as we can, but that's not all of them. What we do have in the 52 class is, and this is new for this year, it's a Corinthian scored series.
Right.
And the idea here is for boats that have 3 pros or less, they can come and compete for the Corinthian Award. The events are the Queen's Cup, Chicago Mackinac, Port Huron Mackinac, and Ugata Regatta here in Little Traverse Yacht Club. So that's a 4-event series for TP 52s, or I should say GL 52s. And that's it. So it's a 4-event series. Legacy will be in there with us. Grit sadly is taking the season off, so we're missing them. And we have a couple other guys, Nimbus from Buffalo, New York. We're trying to get them to come over. There's a boat called Callisto that's Chicago-based that's traveling. We're trying to get them to come back. And then the old Natalie J, which is now called Hooligan, Trey Sheehan's boat out of Columbus or Cleveland. They've been chasing all kinds of cool bucket list events all over the Caribbean and stuff like that. We're hoping they come back too. So this could turn into something really cool.
Trey's not coming back this year. He's going to stay. They're not back on the 52 until November. He's keeping it down in Fort Lauderdale, at least for the season. Yeah. And they're racing some other boats. We know Trey's been on the show a number of times. And
yeah, right.
They got I mean, that'd be a great boat to bring up here. I think just a fabulous.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic boat.
That's the old Interlodge, is it not?
It was the old Natalie J. Before that was a Pinta. I think it was built as Pinta.
Okay.
I don't think that was an Interlodge. The current Mockingbird is an old Interlodge, but there's a lot of
that's what it was.
Around. Those guys built a lot of boats.
As they change paint jobs, it's hard to keep up with the names too.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
So it's the last question from a weather standpoint. Chicago to Mac, pretty consistent.
It was. Interestingly, if you go back and look at the tracker, I think we sailed maybe 8 or 10 less miles than any of the other 52s. If you're not the fastest boat, I think it's important to not sail too many more miles. Being that we were rated as maybe the slowest boat or second slowest boat in the group, from a handicap perspective, we try to just not add too many miles on top of things to make it harder than it was. Natalie J, I think, sailed the most. They sailed maybe 318 statute or something. So I don't know what that is. Maybe it's I don't know, 18 or 20 miles more than some of the rest of us. But they made it work. They were in there too, right until the very end. So weather, yeah, I would say the forecasts are pretty much what happened. It wasn't. I don't know if I could say that entirely, but there was, it's like usual. You get a little bit of everything. We had a lot of just random shifty. A lot of sail changes, 30 some odd sail changes from zero to the kite to the jib to the zero. Mostly kite time.
Well, if the shortest point between two distances is a straight line, your new navigator's got to have a little pat on the back for sailing that 8 or 9 less miles than everybody else.
That's a nice way for him to get started with our project for sure. He's fantastic.
Do you have just a curious question? Do you have a favorite between the Chicago and the Port Huron?
Well, this was my 24th Chicago to Mackinac, and I've only done now 2 Port Huron to Mackinac. So
okay. Not a fair
I like them both, honestly. The delivery over to Port Huron was always too much. But then once we got the 52, we just kind of decided if you're going to have with this tool, you sort of have to do both of those races. And I'm totally glad to do it that way. So I don't know. Chicago feels like that's like my standard long distance race. That's the one I'm happy I won, but they're both about the same. I love them both.
Well, plus you're a Grand Rapids guy, so that's your side of town. So I understand that part. And,
yeah,
and
right.
One last dumb question. I know everybody delivers them by water, but would it be cheaper to deliver it by truck?
No, taking these things apart is a big project. Taking the keel off and the rudder out and pulling the rig. That would be a pretty big.
Too much. Yeah.
Pretty big project.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a couple days. You know what I mean? It's a 3-day delivery from like West Michigan over to Port Huron, and we get a couple of crew and a couple of local crew that sail regulars on the boat, and we try to make it fun. Stop in Charlevoix and have dinner, and it's cool.
Big, huge race. Obviously, this weekend with you got a regatta. We've talked to a couple of different organizers up there, so it looks like you're going to have great weather and pretty good wind. And there's about 175 boats, so it should be a really good regatta.
I don't know how many boats there are. I thought it was I thought the city had a cap at something less than that, but no, it should be awesome. I'm just looking out the window right now. There's some of the 52s are out doing a little practicing, and it's foggy. It's kind of light air, but I think it's supposed to clear up, and we should have some breeze. Cool. Usually in the afternoon it comes on.
Well, Eric, congratulations on the win. And like I said, we just wanted to talk to you. It was kind of fun watching it when we saw the results. We actually clapped when we saw it. So it was neat. It was just nice to see.
I think a lot of people had that reaction. And I think the coolest thing about the whole event for me, frankly, is not that we won as much as that we, as happy as we were about it, all the other people on the dock were just as happy, including the other owners. Every single boat sent, one of the owners or somebody from the boat came down to sort of shake our hands and say congratulations. And I think it woke some people up. It's like, holy crap, this can happen. A well-sailed amateur boat that's well prepared and can be a player. So it was great.
And who better than another owner would know what kind of stuff you've got to go through to get to the point where you are now. So that's great respect.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's a really awesome group, and we're having a good experience for sure.
All right. Well, listen, congratulations, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay, sounds good, Greg. Thanks a lot.
Want to thank Eric, Stephen, Stacy, and John for taking some time, and we will be back next week with the North American Championships, the Laser Championships, right here from Grosse Pointe Yacht Club and Crescent. And we hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.